Okay, so I'm Bree. I'm with the National Safe Boating Council. Welcome to today's session. It is August 10th, and this is rule number 8, action to avoid collision with Captain Alan Dennison. Welcome, guys, and welcome, Alan. Thank you for being here, and you can go ahead and get started.
Great. Thanks, Bree. I just wanted to start off by thanking Bree and the NSBC for asking me to host these. This is my second one, and it's been a lot of fun doing the presentations and just sort of refreshing myself on the rules along the way. But like Bree said, today we're going to talk about rule number 8, action to avoid collision. This is part of the Boat on Course series on the rules of the road, and we'll go ahead and let me see if I can. Can everyone see my screen, by the way? Everyone good?
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Just a quick little background on myself. I've been involved with the National Safe Boating Council for about 10 years. I'm currently the past chair of the board. I've got about 35 years of boating experience, mostly recreational. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I got my OUPV with towing endorsement. I'm a National Safe Boating Council close quarters and open water boat handling instructor, and I've been one for probably 7 or 8 years at this point as well. Currently reside in Annapolis, Maryland, and this is where me and my family do most of my boating, and I do most of the training work and the charter work that I do. Um, so our agenda for today, we're going to just run through some things again that I'm sure you've been through on some of your other sessions, but we're going to go over what the call regs are. We're going to look at the text of rule number 8, the purpose of rule number 8, and then kind of just talk about what the rules just about. We'll just break it down. We'll make it really simple. Put together uh, what we call the rule number 8 action sequence, and then talk about the desired outcome. We'll just sort of talk about the sub rule 8F, and then we'll look at the rule 8 checklist. And at the end, I threw in a video that I found that was pretty decent that we can kind of use to summarize everything. Not a video that I produced or anything, but it's just one of the shorter videos on the topic on that's available on YouTube. So, all right. So coal regs, I'm sure we all know what they are. International rules established by the International Maritime Organization, designed to prevent collisions at sea, and they apply to vessels on the high seas and connected navigable waters, and consists of rules covering, conduct on the water, lights, shapes, and signals like sound and light. So the text of Rule 8, uh, I'll just go ahead and we'll read through these. According to the U.S. Coast Guard Navigation Center, Rule 8, action to avoid collision includes the following key points. So actions must be positive, timely, and follow good seamanship while complying with the previous rules that you've been through in this series. Um, while rules 4 to 19 as well. Course and speed changes should be large enough to be obvious to other vessels. And you want to avoid small changes. You want to make a large and deliberate change. Substantial, well-timed course changes can effectively avoid close quarters situations in if sufficient risk exists. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. There's actually a boat outside my window backing up and blasting its horn. Um, so actions must ensure a safe passing distance with effectiveness checked until cleared. So meaning, you want to make sure that, after you've made your course correction or your change or your speed reduction, you want to make sure that the situation is basically, passed and cleared before you continue on your way. Speed can be reduced and reversed to avoid collision or allow more time for assessment. Vessels required not to impede others must take early action to provide safe passage. Oops. Even when there's a potential collisions, even when there's, sorry, potential collision situation. Um, so what this rule is really about, hang on one second, guys. Oops, did I stop sharing? Free?
You're still sharing.
Okay.
You're okay.
I just lost my screen.
We
Yikes.
have it.
Okay. Okay, I got it back. Cool. So what the rule is really about is really, we break it down very simply. It's, I need to avoid this vessel, and we break it down into a clear maneuver. So it applies whenever you're taking action to avoid a collision. Your action must be positive. It must be made in ample time and consistent with good seamanship. The maneuver must be obvious enough for the other vessel to recognize, and that's either visually or on radar or on AIS. You must continue to check the result until, like we said, until the vessel is passed and clear. All right. Did I lose my ability to drive this? All right. All right. So this is what we kind of call the rule number 8 action sequence, the action sequence. So you want it to be positive. You want to make a clear and positive change, not a small token change. You want them to be able to, you want the other vessel to be able to see that you've made a very distinct change in your course. Ample time, so you want to act early enough to avoid a close quarter scenario. So this isn't, you don't make this drastic change right at the last minute. If you're in a situation where your course is you're on course to potentially have a close quarter scenario, you want to do that, make this change long before that you end up in that scenario. A parent, you want to make the change large enough to be recognized visually or by radar, or like I said, by AIS. So you could be boating at night and you might not be able to see the other vessel, but you see them on radar, you see them on AIS. You want to make your change in course apparent to them on their electronics. Safe distance. So the result must produce a safe passing distance. So like we said, you want to make your course changes obvious. You want to avoid, a series of small course corrections or speed changes. So you don't want to do a course change that might just be 5 degrees at a time. You want to make it a little more drastic than that. You want them to be able to, you want it to be clear to the other vessel that you've made, you know, in a certain situation, you'd want to make it clear that you made a hard change in course to your port or starboard side, preferably, your starboard side. All right. So safe distance is the desired outcome. The Coast Guard does not really prescribe one universal passing distance. What safe is really depends on the vessel size, maneuverability, speed, traffic, visibility, hazards, and the circumstances. So, safe distance might be something totally different on a beautiful clear day as it would be in the dark at night. You obviously want to make sure that at night you're particularly aware of the distance between you and the other vessel or vessels you may be interacting with. After maneuvering, you really want to keep evaluating the developing geometry. So just because you made the course correction doesn't necessarily mean that they saw you and they're not, making another course correction that could continue to reduce the distance in your specific course with them. So they might not have even seen you. So it's important to um, continue to evaluate the geometry in the situation and continue to make adjustments as necessary until the other vessel is passed and clear. So the picture that's on the screen here, not necessarily, I mean, a lot of factors at play here. This actually happened basically right outside my window here in Maryland, right out on the Chesapeake Bay, outside the Severn River. my assumption here is that this wasn't necessarily a course correction issue, but you have a person here that may have thought they were going to pass clear of the sail vessel and may not have been paying attention, and you kind of see the outcome. So fortunately, nobody was really injured here, but I'd imagine that the captain in this scenario probably had some questions to answer with the Coast Guard. So finally, there's no fixed rule for rule number 8 on distance. So rule 8F, do not impede is an early action obligation. So if you're required to not impede, take early action when the circumstances require it. Allow enough sea room for the other vessel to pass safely. Not to impede does not erase your other rule 4 to 19 obligations once risk of collision develops. Likewise, the vessel whose passage is not to be impeded still has obligations under these rules. So, does anyone have any examples of a do not impede situation? You can't really see anyone anymore. Let me see. There we go. So you might have a situation where you're on the water with like a military vessel, a vessel engaged in fishing, and so it falls on you to make the early action in these scenarios where you may have a risk of collision. Let's see. So, all right. So the rule number 8 checklist. Am I acting early enough? You want to make sure you leave substantial time to make your course correction and change. Like we said earlier in the presentation, we don't want to just be waiting till the very last minute to make an aggressive maneuver. Is my maneuver positive and not tentative? Meaning, like, are you making a significant enough positive change in your course and you're not really hesitating, you're making it very obvious. Will the other vessel clearly recognize what I'm doing? So we talked about, visually, you want the vessel to be able to see that you made a substantial change in your course. On electronics, you want them to see on radar or AIS that you've made a pretty substantial pivot in your course, and you've changed direction. We talked about not making small changes like 5 degrees at a time. You want to make substantial changes to make it visible to the other vessels that you've made a course correction. Will this result in a safe passing distance? So is this going to give me enough room to pass the other vessel safely? Could my maneuver create another close quarter situation? So the situation, you could be in a more dense traffic scheme. You could be on a river system where you are going to potentially encounter other vessels and potentially encounter other close quarter situations on the water. So it's definitely something you want to consider when you're making your course correction. And so this is why timing's important, and you want to make sure you're acting early enough. You want to be able to have the time to anticipate what could happen if you make a particular course correction. Do I need to go slow, stop, or reverse? So you can actually, slow down, stop, or reverse under this rule to avoid a collision situation. Now, it's slowing down, stopping, or reversing doesn't necessarily won't necessarily be easily recognizable by the other vessel in the scenario. So, course correction is probably the preferable action. Have I verified the situation all the way until it's passed and clear? So are you continuing to monitor the geometry of the collision risk until it's passed and clear and you're confident that the collision risk is either non-existent or significantly reduced. So finally, we have a video that I found that's about 6 minutes long. I don't think it's too boring. Kind of consolidates everything that we just talked about. So unless anyone has any questions, I'll go ahead and get started with that. Everybody good?
Good.
Good to go? Cool.
I'm good.
Yes, I'm good.
And so we'll get this started. Let me know if anyone has any issues with sound. Do we hear anything?
Rule 8, action to avoid collision. Rule 8A, any action taken to avoid collision shall be taken in accordance with the rules of this part, and shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, be positive, made in ample time, and with due regard to the observance of good seamanship. Explanation. This paragraph tells you that any collision avoidance action must be positive, a firm, clear, and decisive action, not hesitant, not minimal. In ample time, you must act early. Acting too late reduces available options and increases danger. With good seamanship, your action must reflect professional judgment, taking into account vessel characteristics, traffic density, sea visibility conditions, surroundings. In simple terms, avoiding collision requires timely, strong, and professional actions based on good navigational practice. Rule 8B. Any alteration of course and/or speed to avoid collision shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, be large enough to be readily apparent to another vessel observing visually or by radar. A succession of small alterations of course and/or speed should be avoided. Explanation. Core idea. Your maneuver must be obvious. Any change of course or speed should be large enough so the other vessel can see it visually or detect it on radar. Small incremental changes must be avoided because they can confuse the other vessel. They may not appear on radar. They may be interpreted as indecision. In practice, instead of making 3 small 5-degree changes, make 1 clear 25 degrees alteration. Rule 8C. If there is sufficient sea room, alteration of course alone may be the most effective action to avoid a close quarters situation, provided that it is made in good time, is substantial, and does not result in another close quarters situation. Explanation. Key point. If there is enough space, a course alteration alone is usually the best action, but only if there is enough sea room. The alteration is made early. The alteration is substantial. It does not create a new danger with another vessel or obstacle. Why course alteration is often better? It maintains engine power, better control. It is easier for other vessels to detect. It usually avoids close quarters situations more effectively. Rule 8D. Action taken to avoid collision with another vessel shall be such as to result in passing at a safe distance. The effectiveness of the action shall be carefully checked until the other vessel is finally passed and clear. Explanation. Meaning, your action must ensure a safe passing distance. Not just avoiding collision by a small margin, you must pass clearly and safely. You must continue monitoring the situation until the other vessel is finally passed and completely clear. This includes radar plotting, visual observation, ARPA vectors, CPA TCPA checks. Key idea. Keep checking your maneuver until the situation is unquestionably safe. Rule 8E. If necessary to avoid collision or allow more time to assess the situation, a vessel shall slacken her speed or take all way off by stopping or reversing her means of propulsion. Explanation. When necessary, you must reduce speed, slow down significantly, stop the vessel, or reverse propulsion. This is required when you need more time to assess the situation. Course alteration alone is not enough. Collision risk remains unclear. Why this is important? Speed reduction buys time and increases safety margin. Many collisions at sea happen because vessels maintain too much speed in unclear situations. Rule 8F, explanation. This paragraph deals with vessels that must not impede the passage of others, e.g. in narrow channels, traffic separation schemes, or when interacting with vessels that have special rights. F1. A vessel which, by any of these rules, is required not to impede the passage or safe passage of another vessel shall, when required by the circumstances of the case, take early action to allow sufficient sea room for the safe passage of the other vessel. Explanation. A vessel that must not impede another must take early action to give enough sea room. Meaning, do not wait until the situation becomes close quarters. Your duty begins long before there is risk of collision. F2. A vessel required not to impede the passage or safe passage of another vessel is not relieved of this obligation if approaching the other vessel so as to involve risk of collision, and shall, when taking action, have full regard to the action which may be required by the rules of this part. Explanation. Even if risk of collision develops, your obligation not to impede still applies. You must consider all relevant steering and sailing rules. Take proper action like any other vessel. Remember that not impeding does not disappear when CPA closes. F3. A vessel the passage of which is not to be impeded remains fully obliged to comply with the rules of this part when the two vessels are approaching one another so as to involve risk of collision. Explanation. A vessel whose passage must not be impeded still must follow all Colreg rules, is not allowed to ignore responsibility just because it has priority, must take proper collision avoidance actions if danger arises. Key concept, having right of way does not remove responsibility. Both vessels must avoid collision.